I had a watcher a couple days ago request a video about tires. Now, I'm not the best person on tires, but I thought he needed a video. Maybe there are some people out there that are beginners or just getting in and struggle with this stuff. A lot of people that have been in the game for a while probably know way more than I do about tires. But let's roll the intro and let's talk a little bit about tires. I've spent the last 30 plus years working on race cars, building race cars, and racing cars. And I'm here to help you better understand racing technology. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about tires is the cost lately. It's been getting out of hand. Back when I started getting into late model stuff, there was competition between Hoosier and McCreary. Tires for open guys were anywhere from 70, 80 bucks, or they got tire deals. I think a UMP tire back in the day was like $120. And that was because UMP had a deal with Hoosier that every tire sold, a certain amount of it went into a point fund. So I could see where the cost would raise a little bit for something like that. But now we're up to a point where local people are paying $200+ a tire. I think last time I saw it last summer, it was 220 or 230 per tire. And this is just getting out of hand. I think what needs to really happen here is we need more competition. I can still see with the UMP stuff where a series may have a deal with the tire manufacturer to input a certain dollar amount into each point fund, and that would trigger a little bit raise in cost of the tires. But now I don't see that. Maybe in UMP there is, or what, Dirt Car, or whatever they call it now. But in our local series, I don't believe we're getting a big influx of money from Hoosier into our point fund, or else they would, I guess, have you buy from certain certain distributors so that they can track where this money is coming from and going to the series. I can see that raising the cost of tires. Or if you're into economics, and you get into supply and demand, what we're seeing here is we're not seeing a rise in demand or a decrease in availability. We did for a while, but now it's a couple years out. Tires are still real expensive, but we're not seeing a ton of people come in or a shortage or anything like that. What we're basically seeing is outside forces that is triggering this large tire hike in costs. If you think about economics, we're shifting the supply and demand curve to the right instead of raising it or lowering it. It's getting crazy with these tires. Another thing I think might be triggering it is all these big series now, they're paying more money, they want to attract more drivers, point funds for traveling a series now, and money for that is getting really big for these competitors, which I can agree with. It knocks the cost down for them. If they stay on a series at the end of the year, they're going to get a good chunk of money. But The problem is that it's getting spread out to all the local guys too, and the cost of tires is going way up. I think what is going on here is that money that's going into the point fund has to come from someplace. It's not getting pulled out of thin air, and the all the manufacturing costs. I remember when we first started in late models, back when I was building them, I mean, Rayburn was selling rollers for $10,000-$12,000. Now we're up in the $30,000 range with no problem. Rocket always used to be the highest, and I think they got for, a basic car, it was like 16 to 18, somewhere through there for a basic roller. Now we're up in the $30,000-$40,000 range, and it's getting crazy. But like, I get back to tires, I think what's really triggering this is all the money that is getting filtered into these big series for the point fund is just risen the cost of tires, of motors, of cars, and everything else, because everybody's got their hand out. I know what these cars cost to build, and at these $35,000-$40,000 price builds on these cars, it's crazy. It is crazy. I know we could put one together way cheaper than what they're charging now. But on a lighter note, let's get into some of the mechanics on the tires now. I guess I don't know the most about tires and stuff that goes on, but hopefully this will help some people, some beginners, some people trying to navigate, maybe some experienced people. I'll run across something that'll just be useful to them. I don't know. I'm not an expert on tires. But the rule of thumb on tires, well, we'll go through grinding first. Grinding tires is used basically, a tire is like your skin, it gets a callus on it. And grinding a tire or sanding a tire takes that callus off and gets it back down to like a very smooth and supple area of the tire. When a tire gets a heat cycle in it, it'll cure a little bit, and the heat will actually help form the callus on the outside of the tire. Same with sunlight. That's why you always see guys wrapping their tires now. The smart guys are wrapping them with UV shielding, the black saran instead of the clear. That's a lot better because it keeps out the UV rays from hitting the tire. So if you're gonna wrap your tires in saran, get the black stuff and wrap it in the black stuff. The grinding of the tires, like I said, is to help get that down to suppleness. When you get a brand new tire, the reason why we would grind a brand new tire is, let's say that tire's been sitting in a warehouse someplace, or it's been curing for a while, it's sat out in the sun, something. Grinding a new tire will actually take some of the mold release off of it, and it'll take any of the curing off to get that thing into like a race ready mode. That's why we grind a new tire. Other grinding stuff, I would grind a tire after each heat cycle you put in it. You go out and run a heat race, you take it off, you hit it with a simple grind just to bring that tire back to suppleness. When you get a tire off of the car after a heat race, unless you got a big crunch of time where you got to turn that tire around real fast, let that thing cool down a little bit, because as they cool, they'll seal up. So you don't want to grind a hard tire let it sit off to the side, and then seal it, and then put it right back on the car unless you're crunched for time. I would let that tire cool down a little bit, let it take a seal, take that tire and sand it so the tire you're putting on for the next race, feature, whatever, has been cooled, it's been ground, it's back to what I call neutral. You don't want to introduce any heat into that tire as you grind it. I always recommend using like a 60, 80 grit sandpaper on there. Some people like to go really abrasive with like a 36 or so. And that's fine if you're running like a 40 or a 55 or something. You're going to need something a little bit coarser to get through that top layer, but a soft, like a 2, 3, a 20, 30, whatever. I know they changed the numbering system now to 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 20, 30, or 10, 20, 30, 40. But it's basically all the same type of numbering system. They just drop the 0 off the end. One thing I would like to say though about tires is these new tires that they got, the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s or whatever, there is something different about the rubber. It is not the same as your old 10, 20, 30, 40. When I grind a new 20 years ago, it would come off like a really nice sand. Now when I grind a new 2 or the latest edition of a 20, a 2 or a 3, the rubber balls up and is much stickier. When we durometer these new tires, they are actually softer. Now whether they're meant to be, maybe there's a shorter cure time involved since they kind of ran behind in producing these new tires, and maybe these new tires don't get as much cure time as the old ones, but every new 1, 2, 3, or 4, actually I haven't even used a 1, I only deal with 20s, 30s, and 40s, or 2, 3, and 4. The rubber is different. The rubber balls up and is softer, it's stickier. It's a different rubber than we used to run. Rules of thumb about tires. Sprint car guys have always been at the mindset as you put a tire on a car, basically you just want it to last till the end of the race. That was always their mindset for years. Back when we were running late models, sprint car guys never ground tires. Maybe they do now, but they never used to. They used to just put a fresh tire on and chew it off. Late model guys have always been, they always wanted to preserve their tires. They are always wanted to have a solid block at the end of the race. Some tracks are more abrasive, some were less. But you always wanted to have a tire with nice wear that wasn't completely tore off. Now, a lot of sanctioning bodies now will have a tire rule that you'll follow where you have to run the same tires all night and then you can change a right rear. Every sanctioning body does it a little bit different. They're marking tires, and I like that. If they can enforce that well with the marking of tires and cut down on the tires you can use a night, I love that because that's going to help the local racer do it. I wish our sanctioning body around here would mark more tires and get into that program so guys aren't bolting 4 tires on. Even though there's a tire rule about it, they're still, they have the ability to bolt 4 tires on. If we had a marking situation, we could easily cut down even more of the cost of these tires. So I like tire marking. I like tire rules where they're marking them and checking what. Here again, too, that's a labor thing. The more people that have to be involved in the inspection, the marking, and checking, that adds a labor cost to the sanctioning body or track. So that's something that has to get added in. But I like the concept of it if there is any way to police it reasonably with labor. I think that's probably the biggest thing they should be checking. For a long time there was a big thing on, tire soaking and cutting and sending in the samples. That gets expensive. The best thing we can do now is just mark tires and keep inspecting and keep on that marking system. There were some sanctioning bodies talking about a no groove, no sipe rule. I don't know where that's going. In our sanctioning body we run, we can still groove and sipe them. Grooving and siping is real easy to police. You walk up, you look at the tire, either you're DQ'd or you can run. I don't mind that so much. Maybe that will hurt the longevity of a tire if you want to cut it up more, sipe it. It may do something to the racing, but it will definitely cut down on the labor. To groove and sipe a tire, and we get a new tire, we mount it up. Groove and siping of it'll be at least 45 minutes, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, depending on how much work you do to it. That's a lot of labor for smaller local guys to muster up sometimes to keep that car running, keep good tires on the car. It's getting to the point where the labor and everything going into keeping these cars going is getting crazy. Another thing to think about tires is the rubber compound is not only on the surface of the tire to get the tire to live more, the rubber is actually into the sidewall. Now these things don't have steel cords or steel belts in them like our street tires do. They're a nylon cord, so it's real stretchy. A tire gets its traction from the stretchiness of the tire, whether it's traction forward, traction sideways, to get the thing to turn. So when you stiffen up your compound, you're also stiffening up the spring rate and the traction availability to that tire. You want to go with the softest available tire you can run and still get it to live, because that'll keep that compound more consistent all the way around the car. And it will also help your steering and your traction ability. If we could put soft rubber in the sidewall and stiff rubber like on a 40 on the surface, so to get that surface to live but yet still have that sidewall traction, that would be the ultimate. But that's not the way it works. The rubber is the same throughout the tire. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is not only the surface of the tire, getting it to live, but the stretch of the tire to give you traction. A harder tire won't give you as much traction as a softer tire just because it's not as flexible. Good way to think about that. I don't know if you were brought up back in the 70s, they had these things. I'm a 70s kid, but they had these things called big wheels, and they were a pedal with a hard plastic tire, and you pedal them, and it was so easy to spin that tire. But once you got on a bicycle with a rubber tire and the tire that stretches, you could really lay on the pedals and get a ton of traction. 10-speed bicycles, when you got in off of your street bike or your dirt bike, you got a 10-speed where those tires are a lot stiffer. It was easier to break those tires loose. So you want to maintain the stretchiness of the tire for the most traction, but yet you want that tire to live. So that's where tire management and tire thinking all go into play there. I don't know if people think about that whole stretchiness as much as the surface of the tire. You do what you gotta do, but it's always good to keep in mind, if you can, on a slicker track that's not as abrasive, you could run a softer tire, you're better off doing it. Just making sure it will live, though. Now, I know a lot of places, like I said, we're getting away from the tire rules with grooving and siping. Grooving, of course, help your tire dig into the surface more, give you more what most people consider cutting edges, will really get in there. But the problem, if you get your blocks too small, they'll start to tear. And you want to have a good block that won't tear, but yet have enough getting into a soft surface. So tire grooving is real important, and it's different for everybody. Everybody's got their own thinking. They experiment with this, and there's no real good rule of thumb I can give you on how to groove your tires. What it used to be with a 40 or a 55, it was like a 1-inch block, and we always tried to get it cut into 1-inch blocks with like a 1 blade. But nowadays, everybody's got their own thing. Siping, what I was always told with siping, circumference siping, cool a tire, cross siping, put heat in a tire. What it does is, a tire will rub. When you sipe a tire, it will not only make that rubber a little softer, it'll put the two pieces of rubber against each other, and as the tire flexes, they'll rub like this, and they'll add heat. It will help a tire come up to temp faster and stay at temp if you sipe a tire. So that's the reason for siping. We used to, circumference was always for cooling a tire. Sometimes we'll do a circumference sipe if we want to add a ton of heat in like the front tires, because those front tires are not only running radially and stretching, but they're running when you steer a tire. So it's not a bad idea to cross sipe a front tire or a tire you want to move around a lot. You can do them both ways. Siping is it's a science. Everybody's got their own ideas, so there's really no rule of thumb I can give you on what to sipe and what not to sipe and how much or anything like that. Everybody's got their own thing. So I guess that covers everything that I can think of to talk about with tires. There's a ton more to learn, but the best way to do it is follow what other people are doing at your tracks that you're running, or talk to them about certain groove patterns or sight patterns. If you get in with some of the faster guys, he'll give you tips on that. But everybody's got their own thing. But if you like this video, subscribe and hit the like button, and I will see you in the next video.